They say history is written by the victors. But what if two of the greatest war machines in history met on the battlefield? On one side, the Mongols, a ghostly horde on horseback, moving like a storm, their arrows darkening the sky. On the other, the Roman legions, a wall of steel, shields locked, marching in perfect formation. A battle that never happened. But what if it did? Who would win? The world's greatest conquerors or history's most disciplined war machine? Speed versus strategy. Chaos versus order. An empire that devoured the world. Against a force that never lost a war. Stay till the end, because this isn't just a fight. It's a war of strategies, of survival, of empires. Let's get started. Two, most dangerous war machines. The world has seen empires rise and fall, but only a few mastered the art of war so perfectly that they reshaped history itself. Now, imagine two of the most dominant forces ever known, Rome and the Mongols, standing at the edge of battle, their legacies on the line. Rome, at its peak in 117 AD, wasn't just a kingdom. It was a machine, an unstoppable force of discipline, order, and strategy. 5 million square kilometers under its control. 70 million people living under its rule. 1/5 of the world bowed to its might. Its legions weren't just soldiers, they were war-hardened professionals, trained to endure, to conquer, to never break rank. The testudo formation, shields locked, spears aimed, made them nearly invincible on the battlefield. When Rome marched, the earth trembled. But then, there were the Mongols. Unlike Rome's slow, methodical war machine, the Mongols were a storm, fast, unpredictable, and merciless. By 1279 AD, Genghis Khan's empire stretched 33 million square kilometers, from the Great Wall of China to the gates of Europe. No one had ever seen warfare like this before. Mongol warriors could ride 100 miles a day, fire arrows mid-gallop, and disappear into the horizon before the enemy even knew what hit them. They crushed armies 10 times their size, not just through brute force, but through psychological warfare, fake retreats, brutal massacres, absolute fear. Rome was an iron fortress. The Mongols were a wildfire. If their paths had crossed, would Roman discipline hold the line, or would Mongol chaos consume everything? Stay with me, because this is where things get brutal. How this war would begin. Imagine it's the year 1250 AD. The world holds its breath. Two unstoppable forces, separated by time, by geography, by fate, are about to collide in a battle that should have never been possible. The Mongols, fresh from their conquest of the Islamic world, set their sights on the last great challenge, Europe. And standing in their way is an empire that was never meant to still exist. Rome, the unbreakable war machine. But war doesn't start with swords clashing, it starts in the shadows, with whispers, warnings, and impossible choices. A lone Mongol rider arrives in Rome, his armor dusted with the sands of 1,000 conquered cities. He rides straight to the emperor's court, carrying a message sealed with the mark of the Great Khan: submit or be erased. The room falls silent. Senators shift uneasily. Some argue for diplomacy, pointing to past enemies who swore they could destroy Rome, only to be swallowed by history. Others scoff, calling the Mongols nothing more than barbarians on horseback. But deep down, everyone feels it. This is different. The emperor rises, his face set in stone. The words that leave his lips are not a choice, but a declaration. Rome does not bow. And just like that, war is inevitable. But this isn't a simple clash of armies. It's a war between two different worlds. Rome, the master of structure, discipline, and control. The Mongols, the masters of chaos, deception, and speed. And as the first war drums echo through the empire, the question isn't who is stronger, it's who can adapt before it's too late. The tactics of each side. Here's how it would feel to stand on the battlefield. The sun hangs low, casting long shadows over a land torn between two worlds. On one side, a sea of iron, the Roman legions, their shields locked so tightly they move like a single organism. Not men, but a machine. Trained, drilled, unshakable. Every step calculated, every strike measured. Their enemies don't fight individuals. They fight the relentless grind of Rome's war machine, a force that has swallowed nations whole. And on the other side, a ghostly horde. Thousands of Mongol horsemen, barely visible through the dust, circling like vultures. They are not bound by formations or rigid discipline. They are the wind. Impossible to catch, impossible to stop. Each warrior moves as an extension of his horse, loosing arrows at full gallop with inhuman precision. The Romans hold their ground, shields raised, but how do you fight an enemy that never stands still? This is not just war. It's two different philosophies of destruction. Rome was built on order, discipline, and brutal efficiency. Their soldiers weren't just warriors, they were craftsmen of war. The testudo formation, a locked shield phalanx, turned them into a moving fortress, impenetrable to arrows. A Mongol volley would crash against them like waves against stone, harmless. But their true power lay in the close fight. When the time came to strike, the Romans unleashed the gladius, a short sword designed for rapid surgical killing. In the chaos of melee combat, it was lethal, allowing for quick thrusts that tore through armor and flesh. A single Roman soldier was trained to kill, move, and kill again without hesitation. And if they needed to outlast a siege? Rome's engineering prowess was unmatched. They could build fortifications overnight, set traps, and turn any battlefield into a fortress. The Mongols were masters of mobility, but Rome was the master of endurance. But endurance has its limits. The Mongols didn't fight wars, they orchestrated them. To the Romans, battle was a straightforward thing. Close ranks, hold the line, engage the enemy. But the Mongols fought like ghosts. They could cover 100 miles a day, striking where least expected. If Rome set up defenses, they wouldn't attack. They'd starve them out, cutting supply lines, letting time do the killing. Then came the arrows. A Mongol warrior could fire 6 arrows per second while riding at full speed, far beyond the range of a Roman javelin. Imagine standing there, shield up, as wave after wave of arrows never stops. One finds a gap, then another. Wounds accumulate, fatigue sets in. The enemy remains unseen, untouchable. And just when the Romans think they have them cornered, the Mongols vanish. A retreat? No, it's a trap. Rome was a machine of discipline, but discipline could be exploited. Predictability is a weakness. The Mongols thrived in unpredictability, using feigned retreats, psychological warfare, and sheer speed to dismantle armies 10 times their size. But the Mongols had their own weakness. They were nomads. They could conquer, but could they hold? Rome was built to last. Even if the Mongols crushed an army, Rome could regroup, rebuild, and return. So, as the dust settles and the two greatest war machines in history prepare to collide, the question remains: would Rome's discipline break the Mongols? Or would the Mongols rewrite the rules of war? The battle begins. Now, let's step into the war zone. The air is thick with tension. Every Roman soldier grips his shield a little tighter, eyes scanning the horizon for an enemy that refuses to show itself. The ground beneath them is dry, cracked, silent, too silent. It's been days since the Mongol army was last spotted, and an eerie unease spreads through the Roman ranks like a sickness. They expected an honorable war, lines drawn, formations set, swords clashing against swords. But this is something else. The Mongols are playing with them. And then, it begins. A distant whistle cuts through the still air. One soldier barely has time to turn his head before it happens. A storm of arrows blackens the sky. Hundreds, no, thousands, cutting through the air like death itself. The Romans raise their shields, a deafening thunderclap of impact. Arrows pierce through weak points, striking flesh, lodging into arms and legs. The screams of wounded men echo through the battlefield, but before they can react, the Mongols are gone, vanished. A dust storm rises in the distance, their only trace a distant cloud swirling in the wind. The Roman general clenches his jaw. His men are rattled, but they don't break. Discipline keeps them in formation. They wait, and wait, and wait, and wait for days. But the Mongols never attack directly. Instead, they let the Romans starve. The water supply is running low. Morale is cracking. Soldiers murmur in hushed tones, "Are we fighting an army or ghosts?" Then, like a mirage, the Mongols reappear, but not to fight. to retreat, a gift wrapped in deception. The Romans see an opening. They charge, shields up, swords raised. This is their moment. But the Mongols wanted this. The ground shakes. A trap. From the hills, thousands of Mongol riders emerge from hiding. The Romans are no longer the hunters. They're the hunted. The ambush is merciless. Mongol arrows slice through the air from all directions. Roman formations shatter. Soldiers flee. The very discipline that made Rome great now becomes its greatest weakness. They cannot adapt fast enough. And then comes the final nightmare, the last Roman stronghold, a fortress of stone and steel. The survivors retreat, hoping to make a final stand. They brace for another Mongol charge. But the Mongols, they don't charge. They roll out wooden carts, strange barrels. A bitter, acrid smell fills the air. And then, fire. A blast unlike anything the Romans have ever seen. Smoke, flames, explosions, gunpowder. Rome is seeing warfare of the future, but it's too late. The world they know is already gone. The aftermath. War is over. The dust settles. The battlefield is silent, not in peace, but in horror. Smoke rises from the ruins of what was once an unshakable Roman stronghold. Bodies, once draped in imperial armor, now lie motionless in the dirt, their once mighty shields shattered, their swords useless against an enemy that never fought fair. The ground itself is soaked in the blood of a civilization that refused to kneel. The Mongols don't celebrate. They don't pause to admire their victory. Like ghosts, they vanish into the horizon, leaving behind nothing but destruction. Rome, the eternal empire, the machine that had dominated the world for centuries, has just learned a brutal lesson. They weren't fighting another kingdom. They weren't fighting men who played by the same rules. They were fighting something else entirely, something from the future. And now, the world watches in disbelief. News spreads like wildfire. Cities tremble. If the great Roman war machine could be torn apart so effortlessly, what hope does anyone else have? Across Europe, whispers turn to screams. Kingdoms brace for what seems inevitable. But here's the twist. The Mongols never ruled. They conquered, they burned, they moved on. Rome, for all its failures, was built to last. Would the empire rise again from the ashes, or was this the moment history changed forever? The war was over, but its echoes would last for centuries. And that leaves us with one final question. Was victory even the right word for what happened here? Conclusion. This battle never happened, but history is shaped by the wars that did. Imagine if the Mongols and the Romans had clashed, if the greatest conquerors had met the most disciplined empire in history. Would Rome have adapted, or would the Mongols have rewritten the future? Wars decide the fate of civilizations. One battle can erase an empire or forge a new one. The wars that did happen shape the world we live in today. But what if this one had? Let me know in the comments. Who do you think would have won? And if you want more epic alternate history, hit that subscribe button, because this is just the beginning.